Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for July 12th through 18th. This week I read 7 books, I watched 4 shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 1 book. I actually got to a point in my media consumption this week where I went, do I really want to read or watch another thing? Because then I have to talk about it, and my wrap-up's already gonna be really long. But here we are. The first thing I finished this week was Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon. This is a buddy read I did with Adri over at Perpetual Pages, and this was an advanced copy because this doesn't come out until November. Our non-binary protagonist Jebi is native to the land that has been colonized, that they've been living on their entire life, and there are people that have come into it and basically taken it over, and they are just doing whatever they can to survive, which has unfortunately rubbed their sister the wrong way because their sister has very different views about colonization. Jebi, however, just wants to get that coin, just wants to get a job as an artist for the government so that they can get paid, and we start out with them on their journey to getting that job. However, this book is full of so many twists and turns that I don't even know how to talk about it without just spoiling half the plot. Instead, what I really want you to know about this book is it is incredibly interesting the way that science and magic is kind of melded in this book. And I think by now we all know that I love a science fantasy, so that was goals for me. There's romance, there's dueling, there's a very special bond between our protagonist and a creature that I really enjoyed. It feels so weird to think of that creature as being a spoiler when obviously I showed you the cover a little while ago, so if you saw that you can probably guess, but you wouldn't be completely correct. I absolutely love this reading experience, especially because I was doing with Adri and they are just fantastic, and it was so fun to go back and forth with them and be like, I got to this chapter, have you gotten to this part yet? Because I have feelings. And as always, they will have much more eloquent thoughts to give to you, so you should definitely check out their channel if you haven't already. Next, I read All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is a memoir about his time growing up being Black and queer and that particular intersection and what that means. This book also deals with family and fraternity friends and lifelong friends and people that have let you down and abuse, so there are trigger warnings going into that. But every time I read a memoir like this, I feel like I pick up a little bit more understanding about the world, which is ultimately what I want from reading a memoir, and this did not disappoint. After that, I read The Black Flamingo. This is written in poetry, so it was very quick to get through, and it is about this boy who is also Black and is also queer, so it was very interesting to read these back to back. And it's interesting because it's all about him growing up and going to college and finally finding the art form of drag and what that means to him. Both of these books also dealt with first sexual experiences, and obviously one is from a non-fiction standpoint and one is from a fiction standpoint, but it was just really interesting to see these 2 books kind of weave together in my imagination because so many of the same things came up for George and this character, regardless of the fact that George lives in the States and this character was based in the UK. This week I also started out listening to Magic for Liars, and then I unfortunately went to go return a different book on my Cloud Library app and returned the audiobook and went, oh no, I need to finish this, I need to know what happened. And I went back in and the audiobook had holds on it, so I couldn't get it back, but the ebook was available, so I ended up finishing reading it. This book is about a private detective, so it very much gives you like film noir, she walked into my office vibes, which is fun. I also really liked the voice of the protagonist, so that was great, but the main case in this one is someone shows up at our office and says, somebody died at my school. I think that it was a murder, but they seem to think that it was an accident, so nobody else is looking into this, and I want you to look into this. The catch is that this is the school that our protagonist's twin sister works at. Our protagonist's twin sister has magic, our protagonist does not. That is obviously a little bit of a contention in their relationship because they don't really talk anymore. She has to go to this school, go into this world of magic, and figure out who committed this crime, if anyone at all. I really enjoyed the ways that magic was discussed in this book. I also really enjoyed that even though this was a magical high school, teenagers were just teenagers. Obviously, if you give teenagers magic, the magical graffiti they're going to do is dicks. That's what's going to happen. Teenagers are still teenagers even if they have powers. There was lots of misdirection, there was casual queerness, there was uncovering of little details in people's lives, and I just really enjoyed this one, and I also really enjoyed that it was left open-ended. Next I read the graphic novel Talking to Girls at Parties by Neil Gaiman, and I don't think that this was for me. This is one of those things where it seems to be written from an autobiographical standpoint because our main character is only referred to as N, spelled out E-N-N, which is possibly that character talking to Neil. And it's all about how this character, N, doesn't really know how to talk to girls, but his mate does, and they've gone around to this party, and you have an understanding from the beginning that this isn't the party they're supposed to be at, but they're there, and they're talking, and he's trying to talk to girls. But every time he has a conversation with girls, it's really weird. Like, these are beings that are not from our planet. And I can understand the women are from Venus, men are from Mars, or whatever the crap that book was called, type of mentality where, like, we are two different species and it's hard to talk to each other and that type of junk. And I think that's what this was going for, but it also got really arty and weird and enough that I was like, am I even understanding this? And then the end of it could be taken very transphobically, so it just wasn't for me. Like, the art style was nice, whoever was in charge of the art, good job, but everything else I was like, not for me. On Wednesday, I sat down to start reading The Weight of the Stars, and I decided that I was going to vlog it and do another spectacular standalone vlog, and I figured I would probably read The Weight of the Stars over 2, 3, 4 days, something like that. And no, I read it all on Wednesday. I didn't know going into it that the chapters are very, very short, which means that I took 192 clips of footage while filming that vlog. I had an hour and 40 minutes of raw footage, and I got it down to an hour-long vlog, so if you'd like to see me cry about these characters, that will be linked down below. And yes, of course, it's fully captioned. The Weight of the Stars is about Ryan Bird. She lives in a trailer park with her younger brother, who is nonverbal, and his son, who is about a year old. She has this habit of collecting troubled peers at her high school, so much so that a teacher actually asks her to make friends with this new student that has just shown up to the high school. Soon we learn that this new student is somewhat of a celebrity and has a very interesting backstory, which is something that Ryan was interested before even meeting this girl, and shenanigans ensue from there. Other things I can tell you is this has to do with family. There are so many different types of families represented in this book, which was just fantastic. It also has to do with space exploration, and there's some twists and turns I did not see coming, and there was definite tears at the end, so if you want to see me cry over this book, the link is down below. My branch of the library also opened up yesterday for the first time in 4 months with lots and lots of restrictions, only a few people in at a time, all of those types of things, but this also meant that I had some holds to pick up, so I picked them up and I read An Embarrassment of Witches. This is a graphic novel about Rory. She's just graduated from college and she's about to go off to Australia to work on a dragon preservation ranch type of situation with her boyfriend, but in the airport he starts talking about how they should open up their relationship, which is something they've literally not talked about before, and essentially they break up and she doesn't go to Australia and she has to figure out what the hell she's doing with her life. Her best friend has also recently graduated and is now working for her mother, which is a weird dynamic because she feels like her mom has never really liked her but has always liked her best friend. There are many interesting things. This also obviously has a little bit to do with magic because it's just part of this world, but more so it has to do with friendships and relationships and dynamics, and it was a pretty quick read. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite thing I've ever read, but I really enjoyed the art. On to what I watched this week. A couple more episodes of Luke Cage. I don't even know what to say at this point. Like, it's hard to talk about shows when you're in the middle of shows. We're getting to the point where Luke is just so exasperated that he was just like, I wish that these two foes would just kill each other so I don't have to deal with them anymore, which is weird. We also watched a few more episodes of Scandal, and now that we're in the 5th season, and now that I'm thinking ahead to other things that I remember, I'm thinking I maybe watched all the way to the end of the 6th season and not the end of the 5th like I thought I had, because I had no idea where I stopped. I just knew that I haven't seen the end. At least I don't think I've seen the end. If I've seen the end, I definitely blocked it out. I also, of course, watched this week's episode of Canada's Drag Race. The girls had to do some rap battling. That was fun. It was also a hair show challenge, which some of them looked amazing while they did it. And of course, I continue to enjoy my Thursday evenings because of this show. Last night, I stayed up way too late, to the tune of 3 a.m., watching reruns of Jeopardy on Netflix, because that's a thing that exists. Essentially, I was really wanting to kind of play some form of trivia game, but we don't really have one, and it would just be me and the boyfriend, so he was like, you know, there's Jeopardy on Netflix, we could just watch that, and I was like, yes, we're big enough dorks that we're doing that. If you ever want to feel like you're really bad at trivia, just watch Jeopardy. It will knock you down a peg, especially because you don't necessarily, or I don't necessarily, understand the way that the questions are being asked. And of course, at one point, Chad was off, like, on his computer playing video games with his friend who's in the territories, but he could hear the questions, and he was playing the game and answering the questions faster than me, which was just infuriating, so I put on headphones so he couldn't do that anymore. Because if my whole brain can't get the answer, but your half brain can, I'm jealous and I just need to enjoy my media by myself. Speaking of brains, the first movie I watched this week was Concussion. This is the biopic about the doctor that finally took on the NFL and basically said, you are hurting people. It is actually legitimately making people have mental problems down the line by playing football, and you don't do anything to help them. This may come as a shock to you, but I don't really follow sports news, so it was a shock to me that it was only very recently that it was discovered how much this was actually affecting players. And once again, this is just another one of those movies where I'm like, I don't want to actually watch sports, but I will watch a movie about them. Another movie having to do with at least one athlete that we watched this week was Baywatch, the remake. This had no business being as good as it was. This was funny, this was ridiculous. I loved how often characters were like, we're not the police, why are we trying to solve this case? I loved that because you never see that when people are doing amateur sleuthing things. I really enjoyed that The Rock's character Mitch would call Zac Efron's character by a different boy band name or something like that all the time, and I was like, we're gonna get to a point where he calls him High School Musical, aren't we? Because that's funny, and it happened, and it made me very happy. The level of dick humor in this that was actually legitimately so funny. Like I said, I have no idea how this is as good as it is because it has no right being so, but it is so funny. The book I listened to in full this week, instead of just, you know, returning that audiobook to the library before I wanted to, was How to Be an Anti-Racist. The best way to describe this is it seems like a series of essays that are part based on personal experience and part based on anti-racist theory. And it was this interesting mixture of things that I know about and understand, and then things that had happened in US history that I had no idea about, or had some idea about, but had no idea about the depth of the racism and the hatred. There are many different interesting takeaways from this book, but one of them that stuck with me was the discussion of Black people can't be racist, and how the author posits that yes, they actually can, because even if you're not meaning to, you can perpetuate these systems that are racist. I know that this is contentious and I do not feel qualified to speak on it, but I do know that a common belief is that if you have prejudice and then you mix power with that, that's when you can get racism, whereas a minority having a prejudice against a majority is just prejudice. The root of this topic is that you can have internalized racism and that affects your actions, and you can perpetuate systems that are racist because you are playing out your internalized racism. The author obviously says this way more eloquently than I have tried to say this now. The author also reads the audiobook, so if you like to read audiobooks and listen to the author actually speaking to you, pick this one up for that. That's it for this week. Tomorrow also starts the reading rush, and I think that I'm going to do a weekly vlog for it, so look out for that in about a week's time. Strangely enough, even though I tried to make sure that I wasn't busy because it is one of the biggest reading events of the year, I have a bunch of things to do this week, including going to my retail job, which is still weird, and I don't know how to feel about it, but it's gonna happen. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you're on your keyboard. Some of you have asked if there's a way to financially support me at this time, so I set up a Ko-fi account. You can also just send me money by PayPal, or you can buy things from my Amazon wish list if you so choose to do that. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!